Hi, I am Dee Dee Jones.
And I'm Stan Copeland, the pastor of Lovers Lane United Methodist Church in Dallas, and this is Hope Connection. And today we have a friend of mine. I guess we tried to figure out, Brion, it's been 16 years, I guess, since we first met. And this is Brion Sims-Johnson, and he's got a book. It's fantastic, and it's his story. And, how can a young man like Brion have such a wonderful story and have it already published and everything? It's just amazing. But I'm really proud of you and so happy you could join us today.
Yes, sir. I appreciate y'all for having me here, just to come out here and be able to share my story. And, like you said, it's been a long time, but it's been a blessing all these years that we've known each other. So I'm thankful to be here.
I love it because most of the time you write a book when you get really old.
Yeah.
Not Brion. Brion had a story before he was 30 years old.
That's right.
And I love that you wrote that story.
Yeah, I do too. And, Brion is a police officer. He's a police officer in Frisco, Texas. And when I knew him, he was a 7th grader in the youth getting started here at the church. And we're just also really not surprised, but so thankful for your journey, Brion. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your life and your growing up and what led you to write this book?
Oh, for sure. Like she's saying, to typically people, who want to tell their story are older than me, I guess, but for my life, it started way younger, and a lot of people, and when I go out and talk to youth, I always say, you don't necessarily get to choose where your starting point is. You're kind of just born into the madness, right? So in my life started off from St. Louis. It didn't start off in the Texas area. It started off in the middle of the hood of St. Louis on the south side, and I was raised by my mom, and she was a single mom, so it was tough for her, for me, and my older brother, Justin. And growing up in this community, it wasn't much opportunity for us. It was a very dangerous community for us to survive in. So me and my brother were constantly, trying to avoid trouble and trying to make a life for ourselves. Right. And, so going forward from there, it was, trying to go to school. It was trying to, stay out of trouble, trying to connect with the little family that you do have out there to try to make it out. And my story really takes place, even though we struggled a lot with my mom, growing up, where she struggled to pay the bills. We were getting evicted every other month. It was just kind of a madhouse for us because, it felt like we didn't really have a direction of where we were going. We were just kind of living day by day, and my mom was just figuring it out as she went along. And thinking about Brion in this neighborhood, I know people think because I'm from St. Louis, I just automatically came, with all these cool perks and stuff like that. I'm like, I was actually a very nerdy kid. I didn't take too well to the neighborhood. I was very book smart. I just want to stay out of trouble, just read, just stay inside mostly. And it was hard in that neighborhood. Yeah. So I was bullied a lot because, I just didn't fit in. It felt like I wasn't in the right place of where I was supposed to be. And so my older brother, Justin, they called him J-Rock in the neighborhood. He earned his name. He's very opposite of me. Okay. J-Rock's the cool guy and everything. He's the cool one. He's the one that everyone's like, hey, man, you're Justin's little brother. Well, they say you J-Rock's little bro. He's like, oh, you're J. And he used to give me a pass in a lot of neighborhoods, because the guy's coming up to me saying, what are you doing in our neighborhood? And I'm like, they're like, oh, wait, you're J-Rock's little brother, right? I'm like, yes. They're like, all right, you can go. So wow. It was that type of environment. So we were surviving there. So this was constantly for us, my brother being the protector, my mom trying to provide as much as she could. And it just wasn't enough at the end of the month. Like we would come back home and our life would be started over because we'll go back. The eviction notice is on the door. We got to go. We don't have the money this month. So it was rough for us. And, it was constantly like that for many years, but my mom really tried to distract us. That's what I always think. My mom was an amazing mom growing up because she always distracted me from that. We didn't have much, but she tried to give the most that she could, and she tried to distract me from all the madness there. And I felt thankful. Like I didn't even realize I was living in, this rough place because, I had my mom, I had my brother. I was like, I'm loved, I'm good. Right. And really the turning point of my life and the whole life journey that I have is, it's easier when you have the right people in your life to, make it out of this madness, to make everything seem more calm. But when you don't have those people, then that's when the whole world just shifts for you. And that's what happened to me. And when I was 12 years old, my mom came back home one day and she said, you know, I'm going somewhere. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And she didn't come back. And it was, that was just heartbreaking for me, you know, because I was a huge mama's boy. I was, you know, attached to my mom's hip no matter where she went.
And the
you know,
baby.
yeah, exactly. The baby of the family. There we
That's
go.
right.
Yeah,
And
the baby of the
Yeah.
family. And I'm like, man, where's my mom? And I believed her, you know, when she said, hey, you know, I'm going to be gone for a few weeks. And man, I didn't have any reason not to believe her. I'm like, okay, she's been gone before. I mean, for not that long, but she's been gone before. You know, I can, you know, wait until that time. So, and my brother that day, I should have known something because he's a lot older. Well, he's 5 years older than me at that time. So he's 17 at the time, but he knows a lot more. He's more street smart. He knows what's going on. So he was having this like kind of tougher look on his face of, you know, he didn't believe that she'd be back in that time. And so when she left, it broke his heart too. And because now he had to step up into a responsibility that he didn't sign up for necessarily, to take care of a whole 12-year-old and say, now I have to like fend for him. And so that's really what happened. My mom left. Me and my brother kind of went on the road from there. It was tough for us because we basically went to different family members. I mean, what's the first thing you do when, you know, you lose somebody? You try to go stay with some family. You know, you go find friends, family, stuff like that. And you would think this would be like a magical moment where you're like, okay, family stepped up, they took care of Brion, and the rest was history. Like they raised him, but it wasn't the case. That was the beginning of a downward spiral that I didn't know at that age that my whole world was about to get rocked, basically. And so when my mom left, I went to go stay with family and stay with like grandma, and then I stayed with a guy who's very a very interesting character. I call him the villain of kind of the whole little first part of my life, but it's Uncle Jimmy. You know, I went to go stay with Uncle Jimmy, and this guy wasn't a nice guy, man. He was that definition of a person you didn't want to be with. I mean, every single day he would tell me, you know, I'm worthless. I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be successful. And because I wasn't his kid, it just made it more anchorage to say those things. And so my brother had left during this time as well because he thought that, you know, the world would have more sympathy on a 12-year-old boy than a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old boy. So he kind of separated himself and said, hey, you're going to live with family. I'm going to go kind of run the streets in St. Louis, and I'm going to survive on my own. I'm going to do that. So he thought I would be safe, but I think if my brother knew what I was going to be into, he probably wouldn't have left, but he had faith in that uncle. But yeah, this guy, I mean, through straight mental, emotional, physical abuse, this guy was, he was a rough person. And during this time, I'm still going to school. I still have to get my life together, and now I'm having to keep coming back to him, and he doesn't really want me there. He tells me that every day, like, what is your plan? Like, nobody wants you. And what makes it crazy about his character is he's a huge church-going man. So he was, I mean, first front of the row at the church, and this was, I was going to a Pentecostal church at this time. I won't say the name, but I was going to a Pentecostal church at this time, and he was there, and front runner, everyone knew him, everyone would talk to him, and I believe everyone kind of knew how he was, but no one said anything. Everyone was just kind of like stayed out of his way because he was kind of like the big bad bully on the block too. No one wanted to challenge his word. No one wanted to say anything to him. So I was kind of left on my own at that point. It was like, no one's going to help you at this point. So I was doing that, living with him and trying to go to school at the same time. And school was tough for me because now I got to focus. I got to try to, you know, like minimize what's going on at the house, and then now I got to survive with this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm staying with Uncle Jimmy. My mom, still haven't heard from her yet. My brother's gone. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can just, you know, focus on school, and everything's gonna make out where it needs to go. And lo and behold, we're still in that downward spiral because one day the principal comes in there, and then she tells me, you know what, your mom doesn't have those medical papers that you need to be here. You're going to have to leave. She had me escorted out of the school from gym class all the way out, which is completely embarrassing. As a 12-year-old, you're 12 at this time, to walk out in front of all your friends and told, hey, you know, if you come back here within, you know, X amount of feet, you know, we're going to call the police to have you criminally trespass from this school. And it's like, you're 12, you're like, okay, what do I do now? You just took away school from me, and I'm losing hope at this point. And it's like all of my hope that I do have in this world and me being successful, I'm like, what's going on? And I remember leaving that school that day, and I sat on a curb like a couple blocks down the road, and I remember sitting down on the street, and I said, what happened to my life right now? I was like, I don't know what happened. It's like yesterday I'm with my mom, I'm with my brother, everything's normal.
Right.
And now my life is with the uncle who doesn't want me there, who's just putting me through the ringer. And then school's just kicked me out. I don't have my family here. I don't know what to do. I was like, this can't get worse. And I learned to stay away from that phrase, because when I went home to Uncle Jimmy, he said, you know what? I don't even want you here. I need you to get out of my house. So Uncle Jimmy kicks me out. He said,
Same day at the school.
Yeah, he gets me out of there. He's like, basically, you're worthless. And this is after a speech he had given me. And, you know, people read the book, how this guy's character is. He's very much a bully, you know, by definition. And this guy has, you know, would constantly torment me. And there was a speech he gave that I still, in my adulthood, that I've gone through, you know, counseling about. I've talked to, you know, people in high school, after high school, adulthood, about this same conversation that was had, and it echoed in my head. It was one night after church, and he would normally do his normal, you know, well, what are you going to do now? Nobody wants you. So he started attacking my dreams first. So he started asking me, he's like, what do you want to do with your life? I said, well, I want to be a football player. He's like, well, you're too weak and skinny. You know, you're not going to make it in football. So what else? I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be this. And he's like, well, you can't be that either. So what I realize now, obviously, my adulthood, he's trying to find stuff to kind of belittle you no matter what it is. He's going to, no matter what you said, it was going to be some type of, you know, trying to down you. And so I finally, you know, so I started crying there, and everyone's laughing around. Everyone's kind of, you know, poking fun at me. And I'm sitting there like, man, no one's going to help right now. And then he started telling me, like, you're on your own. He's like, no one wants you. He was like, your dad didn't want you. That's why he was never in your life. He's like, your mom left. That's why she didn't want you. That's why she left. Your brother's not here. He was like, when will you face reality? That was the phrase. He face reality. He is like, your reality is this. Nobody wants you. No one's going to save you. No one's going to take care of you. And so I started crying so much. He's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? No one wants you. And so I started walking off. And I started walking off down the road. He was like, where are you going to go? You have nowhere to go. You need to face reality. No one, you know, so he's yelled this all the way until I was out in the distance. And that phrase echoed in my head for life. You know, that phrase, face reality, face reality, face reality. So it was a tough thing for me, like a mental battle during that time period to deal with. And that's how Uncle Jimmy was. And when I made it out of his house and I went to go stay with my aunt during that time period, so once he kicked me out of his house and left me with that great closing speech, you know, I ended up living with my aunt. And then we got a call from a cousin in Texas saying that we have a place here and, you know, in Mesquite for you guys to live. I was like, you know, my first, you know, initial, I guess, like, I thought the Texas stereotypes of the, you know, I'm not trying to be a cowboy. I'm not trying to, you know, ride horses, work on the ranch. You know, I'm 12 at this time. But we ended up jumping on the bus and going. And before I ended up leaving, Uncle Jimmy made his last final mark on everything. That was the night before we had to leave. And he showed up. And this is why I say my brother, I said, even if you don't know who Justin is, I was like, just know, like, in every sense possible, I would not be here without him. I was like, that was him. And that's why strong, like, based on my strong faith that I have, I'm like, my brother was literally my guardian angel on this earth and out of this earth. Like, he's, like, I strongly feel, and this is my belief, I strongly feel my brother was handpicked by God to be in my life. And that's how, like, strong of a connection. Because I still get emotional about that, man. Because this guy, I would not be here. And so that night, Uncle Jimmy tried to, like, kind of finish everything with me. He tried to basically take my life at that point. And my brother was there, and even from his side of the story of what happened, and my cousin's side, and everyone's just matching up to, like, what the heck just happened? And he literally, and that's in that book, but it talks about my brother coming in right at the right time to stop this guy from basically assaulting me at this point. And because of that, you know, I'm here to be able to do this.
So the two of you came to Texas on that bus.
Yes.
To live with an aunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Cousin. I apologize. Cousin. My cousin. During that time period.
Yeah.
And we stayed with her for a few months, and we stayed with her throughout the summer. She ended up, which was a big change for us. We were used to the St. Louis environment. We weren't used to Texas, but Texas changed my life. That was the start of something great. It gave me the glimpse of opportunity. And so we started living our life in Texas. We ended up cycling back to St. Louis one more time, unfortunately, but we quickly came back when there was a decision to come back to Texas. And when I went back to Texas, it was, you know, a different life for me. I remember telling my brother, I said, now that I'm back here to say, I won't leave again. I was like, I don't know what it is. I was like, I've never felt this way about another place. When I first saw Dallas and I first saw downtown, I got this strong turn in my stomach that this is where you're supposed to be. Like, this is where you're meant to be in your story. So I was like, I'm not leaving. And
What got you to Lover's Lane?
so I ended up, once I came to Texas, like, life started changing for me a lot, and I started getting friends. That was something I didn't have. I was bullied in St. Louis, but in you know, in Texas, I've met this whole new group of friends, and I met a guy named Davis, and Davis Bittner, we didn't like each other at first. We always talk about it. I said, I don't know. We don't even remember what it was. So I was like, we just remember we just had this, like, unspoken beef. And I remember
Just
one day.
about 'em.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we still don't remember. We joke about it to this day. And we were on the basketball team together. And that's where we bonded, because you're forced to work with your teammate. If you're not working with your teammate, you guys are not going to win. You need a team at the end of the day. So we started realizing, we're different, but we're the same. You know, it was weird. We connected with each other. And then he said, hey, man, I don't know what you're doing one evening, but, you know, we have this youth group at my church, and, man, I'd love for you to come. I was like, man, I'm not going to lie, that sounds kind of lame. I'm not trying to, I was like, I'm not going to waste my time
And
there.
your experience with church hadn't been too
Hadn't been the
Exactly.
greatest
I mean,
anyway, right?
So I'm
right.
not eager to go into that setting.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, I'm good, man. He's like, come on, bro. He's like, there's going to be food there. We're going to play basketball afterwards. I was like, all right, I guess I can sit in on one. And so I sat in there, and I remember sitting in there for the first half and the first youth group I went to, and I said, you know what, man, this is not really doing it for me. I was like, I don't think I'm going to come back. And it was the end that really changed everything for me, the last few minutes that we really had. And they talked about our type of our faith. And what it meant for us, and to know that we were all going through that similar struggle, like, to try to understand everything, like, that's what connected. Everyone got serious. Everyone started giving, like, their real feelings, and then I respected that a lot. So after that day, I said, I want to keep coming back. So that's how I ended up coming to the youth group. And
It wasn't easy for you to get to the church either. You were public transit.
yeah, I was going. I was traveling for some hours to try to get here. I was traveling from, like, South Dallas, Pleasant Grove. I was traveling from everywhere, and Davis would help me out. Sometimes his parents would arrive.
Now, how old are you about this time?
So around this time, I'm probably like around 14. So me and him I'm regularly going, and then you guys had the summer trips as well, the little, retreats. And I didn't have a way to pay for it. I said, man, I don't know how to pay for this. I don't have money to go here. And they were like, don't worry, we'll work something out with you. Don't worry, we're gonna try to get you on this trip. And then church ended up covering me and giving me to this trip, and it was life-changing for me, and that's what made me stay. So
Well, when I read the book, I mean, I was so in awe, really, about not just your early lifehood experience, but such a negative beginning with church through your uncle, and such a terrible force, really, kind of an evil force in essence. And then when you get to Texas and get that invitation to come back, and you give it another chance, and in essence, it sounds like it made a big difference in your life. You know, you made a big difference in a lot of the youth
That's right.
and families of youth's life through your involvement, and you ought to celebrate that today. You know, I want to have you back for another show, because we need to talk about your involvement with the police department in Frisco.
Yes, sir.
And what on earth got you involved in law enforcement? We need to talk about all of that.
Yes, sir.
But I want to say one word in closing. Brion has a son, Emerson, and he is a chunk. I'm telling you, 9 pounds at birth, and just a beautiful kiddo. And I know that he's got a dad who wants the very best for him. And maybe in this next episode, we'll talk a little bit about that too.
Yes, sir.
So thank y'all for coming online to Hope Connection. It's been a joy to be with you. And Brion, thank you so very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, guys.